One Piece 1169 is the final chapter of the year, and we get some banger moments. Let's get into it. Oda starts us off with an amazing cover page, and it's the Rocks Pirates and Rocks himself, and they look so sick. And I've discussed this previously, but with Rocks' hair, I've asked if it's actually blue and white or if it's purple and white, and it would look like blue and white in the cover page of the Shonen Jump magazine of a couple weeks ago in I think 1166 or 1165, but now it looks like he has purple hair, which is really interesting. So potentially he has white and purple hair, just like the Sun God. More to see on this, I guess. And now we're finally back, as we assumed, back to exactly where the flashback started, and it's 14 years ago. Shanks is in Elbaph after leaving the God Knights, and Herald is back, with the Depths Covenant within him, and the guards are trying to stop him from going crazy, right? Seeing the grin on Shanks' face as he says, well, in that case, I guess he's like a little brother to me. When him and Gaban are discussing that Roger has had a son, which is Ace, this scene just hurt so badly because go back to Marineford, right, with the context of Shanks stopped Kaido from showing up to Marineford, stopping another force from interfering with that war, and then showed up to Marineford himself. We don't know his motives or whatnot, but this man stopped the war. And that panel where he's holding Ace, Ace's dead body, you can see he's, very sad. And just the fact that this is the man who actually buried Ace and Whitebeard, there's levels to it, right? It's basically like he buried his little brother at that point. And Shanks must have had more emotional attachment to that moment than we realized at the time. And within the same context, Shanks goes on to say that Ace will be the one that, takes the throne of Pirate King. And Gaban goes and says such a peak quote. Sometimes those with the greatest expectations placed on them fail to achieve that greatness. Just a phenomenal line that came out of nowhere. And Gaban, good job. Now let's focus on the bigger part of this chapter, which is, Herald. And Herald's going through his own dilemma with being controlled by Emu. And I love that Oda gets to show us his inner monologues that he's having with himself and trying to understand the situation around him and see what he can do. It's great to just see the inner monologue of a man who is losing control of his body and trying to figure out what to do and see what he can do and see what he can say. I love that scenario that Oda built up for this scene. And a standout panel is when we see when Loki enters the throne room with Jarl, and you see a silhouetted figure of Herald, which is what we saw in the first chapter of this flashback, but we see a silhouetted figure, and inside the silhouette itself we get the text bubbles of how can this be, I truly am immortal, as you have those guards piercing through him. I don't even know how to describe it. It was harrowing. It was kind of scary, of like a man realizing like I cannot stop this from happening, and just seeing like technically this dead man coming back to life with this. It was such a good moment. Small part about this, we get to see this panel of, Shanks and Herald discussing with each other. And I guess the reason why Herald knew Shanks was because of the red hair pirates things. It was nothing bigger on that scheme. I think whether it was the copyrighted video or not, I had discussed on why does Herald recognize him if it isn't the red hair connection, but it turns out to be it is the red hair connection. That's why he recognizes him. And we go through this whole moment where Shanks kind of explains the whole Covenant's ordeal to Gaban, like the levels and what you achieve at those levels, and the he calls it, I've signed this deal with the Great One, I think the Great One of Marishwa. And he explains basically stuff that we've known or assumed as much, so cool to see confirmations. He adds a little part to it where I guess the Shallow Covenant, there is a range to it, right? If you have the Shallows Covenant, then depending on the range, Emu cannot get in contact with you or see where you are or gain control over you, which kind of explains why Emu wasn't maybe able to do stuff to Shanks while he was in the East Blue before he got his arm ripped off by the Lord of the Coast. But the Depths Covenant, Emu doesn't need a range, so Herald's free game no matter where he is, and any other person with the Depths Covenant, which I am assuming that's what's happening to Gunko right now. We get some great action panels between Herald, Loki, and Jarl and the guards. Just people trying to take down Herald. Herald just going crazy. Stunning panels from Oda here. And, Loki and Jarl trying to stop it. Herald wanted Elbaph to know what happened at the throne room that day. And we know that doesn't happen, which is, I'm curious to see why or how this goes about. Because Herald's begging them to say, this is what happened. You need to tell everyone in Elbaph and let them know what happened to their king. And as we know today, they shun Loki and kind of blame Loki for this moment. And shocking reveal here was it was Herald's idea for Loki to eat the devil fruit of Elbaph, right? The treasure of Elbaph. I did not expect that to be the case. I thought maybe, I mean, I actually assumed that Loki might have gotten it for himself, or as my theory suggests, Shanks takes it. But I never assumed that Herald would be like, no, Loki, go eat it so you can kill me. Curious to see what this power is now if it isn't the gum gum fruit, obviously, right? And it maybe seems like it might not be the gum gum fruit because we'll discuss later in the chapter, but Loki is the one that opens the treasure chest. I don't know how Shanks gets in there or what happens to create that scenario that I described in my theory, but we'll have to see. And as the character progresses, Herald continues to be such an amazing character, right? This quote right here where he goes on to say when he's being held down by Loki and Jarl, once I'm dead, my reputation means nothing to me. All that matters is Elbaph's future. Am I wrong? Great character. Just phenomenal stuff here. As the character who wanted to make Elbaph better, taking on the responsibility, realizing the wrongs that he has done, and just accepting it and saying that forget about me, Elbaph matters the most. It falls in line with this character, which I love, and it falls in line with the situation he had with Rocks. It's so good. Now Emu has taken control over Herald, and we can tell this through the text bubbles that's being shown for Herald. It's a little bolded more than usual, which is how Emu speaks, and the font Oda uses for Emu. And I guess Herald, which is Emu controlled, is the one who shoves the sword through Jarl's head. And I thought there was going to be an explanation to this or something bigger to the whole grand scheme of why Jarl has a sword through his helmet and head, but turns out to be just a comedic effect, right? We later on see that Shanks and Gaban show up into the throne room to protect and save whatever they need to do in this situation. But they ask, hey, Gaban asks, hey, Chief Jarl, are you okay? And Jarl's like, yeah, this helmet saved my life. No, it didn't. You still got that sword through your head. So I guess it's just a comedic relief more than just anything that Oda was going to further explain. And now we end the chapter, and the final panel of the 2025 One Piece is Loki finding the treasure of Elbaph and Ragnir. And it looks like Ragnir moves on its own and attacks Loki, which is really interesting. I don't know if this is a situation where Ragnir has a will of its own, given that maybe it has eaten a Zoan devil fruit, or this is just a crazy theory out there. Could be multiple different reasons, but there is a potential where this is a Tontada. Don't stick to that theory, guys, and don't run with it. I doubt that's the case, but an idea to throw out there because it can be anything, and we're not going to get another reveal for another 2 weeks, so we'll find out in 2026. And I mean, 2025 was a wonderful year for One Piece. Elbaph was such a great arc so far, and we're going to get back into it really soon, I would assume. And just this whole Rocks Pirates and the God Valley flashback has been more than what the fans could expect, going back to that Gaban quote where, when people have expectations, people don't achieve the greats that people assume they do. But Oda continues to do that, so, little meta quote from Oda there, right? And this is sort of breaking news that comes from this weekend before we end this chapter discussion off. And it's from the Jump Festa message that Oda had, right? And he goes on to say, everything's only going to get rougher. To the island only the Pirate King was able to reach. And the man known as Firescar will also appear. That character and that character who never met will finally meet. And that character will also meet. What is next year? A meetup festival? Now, one thing to note, Oda just, basically is telling us potentially in 2026, we are either getting to Lodestar Island, which was the island that Roger got to before realizing there's another island, or we're genuinely getting to Laugh Tale, which is crazy to think about. Obviously, this is a moment we've been waiting for a long time, but just crazy. I'm assuming it's Lodestar, not Laugh Tale. I doubt we're getting that close to Laugh Tale, but we could see because he goes on to say we're going to meet the Firescar Man, which is the last person we need, the last piece we need, which is, if you guys don't know Firescar, I'm assuming Oda's either revamping the name or mistranslation between two areas, but this is the man with the burn scar that Kid talks about at the end of Wano. And he has the final poneglyph, right? And so we're going to meet him. We're going to get the final poneglyph somehow from him, and off to Lodestar Island or off to Laugh Tale now that we have the 4 poneglyphs. And then this person and that person meets. I mean, you can get so deep into this to just figure out who it is, but a couple of things that come to my mind. Dragon and Shanks might meet. Dragon and Luffy might meet. Potentially Luffy and Shanks finally meet. Dragon and Garp might meet, and then you just go crazy, right? Blackbeard and Dragon, maybe, or Blackbeard and Emu. Just characters you wouldn't even expect it to meet. I mean, Kobe's in this, Aokiji's in this. That final panel where it says the one who claims the One Piece, right? Which is like nearly the end of Egghead, the phenomenal panel we got that just got animated in the anime, I think 2 weeks ago or last week. It could be a multiple things, so just love this thing. It's reminding me a lot about what we got in 2022, where Oda had said that there's going to be a battle royale, basically, for One Piece, and that's when we got the Shanks versus Kid, Garp versus the Blackbeard Pirates, and then we got the Law versus Blackbeard, and Luffy versus the Gorosei. All in all, great chapter, phenomenal year for One Piece, and I cannot wait to see what we get in 2026. So, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you guys thought about this chapter. Let me know what you guys expect for 2026. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.